All right. Oh, I do not miss having to do this. Okay. There we go. Okay, so yeah, if you're on Zoom and you can't see something, let me know. I probably won't be checking the chat box that often, but just holler. I have my sound on, so should be able to hear you. Okay, so this is A&P 1, Human Anatomy and Physiology 1, the first of 2 semesters. I think everyone takes both semesters. So like I said, we're just going to get into a little bit about the course. Well, first I'm going to introduce myself, for those of you who don't know me, a little bit about the course, kind of what to expect, and then some basics about anatomy and physiology. All right. So my name, I'm Dr. McDaniel. Email is the best way to reach me. I have a phone number, but no one ever uses it, and well, my office phone anyway. So email me if you need to get in contact with me. I'll show you the syllabus and where to find my office hours. You can always just drop by my office as well. Stewart 215, so I'm upstairs and kind of diagonal on the other side of the building. So I'm in this building. Go Dogs, I went to Georgia for my PhD, so kind of a big game tonight. Yeah, and I actually didn't get my PhD in anything dealing with human anatomy and physiology. I studied bugs. So my PhD is in entomology, which is kind of crazy, but throughout my career, they always need A&P teachers. So there's a lot of people going into human health stuff. So I've taught A&P quite a few times at different institutions. This is my second full year here at Piedmont. So this will be the 3rd time I've taught A&P here, A&P 1. Yeah, my background, I just love being outside and have always loved ecology. If anyone's interested in ecology, although if you're in A&P, you're probably not going on in anything ecological. But just to keep in mind, yeah, my research was in wetlands and rivers and wetlands, basically studying bugs. I also have a family that takes up a good bit of my time. So I have a 2-year-old son, a little dog, and then a husband. So if I don't get back to you right away, especially on the weekends, I don't really check my email as much. I try to get back to people really quickly. Within 24 hours is always my goal. It's usually a lot faster, especially if it's a pretty easy question. But otherwise, just keep in mind the weekends, I might not get back to you quite as quickly. Okay, so that's me in a nutshell. Not a whole lot else you need to know about me. I'll talk about the class and kind of what you can expect from me in this class. The course in general. So, and stop me if you have questions along the way, always. It's obviously about anatomy and physiology, specifically with humans. We'll talk about the difference between anatomy and physiology today. They're slightly different, but we cover both of them in this course. Some places you'll take only anatomy and then only physiology. Sometimes they split them. But here, I think it's more common in most schools to combine them because they are so interrelated. We're also going to continue your training as a scientist. Maybe you don't think of yourself as a scientist yet, but if you're going into anything human health oriented, it's hopefully based on scientific principles. So scientific thinking and investigation, we're not going to do a whole lot of investigation in here. It's a lot of, yeah, heavy lecture and kind of memorization. But then also communication. So communication is often overlooked in the sciences. There's a lot more focus on it these days, but I have one project that I'm going to have you do that deals with scientific communication, and I'll talk about that later this week. But those 3 aspects are really important as you go forward in the sciences. So we're going to continue that. And like I say this in every course, it's really challenging. So if I had you for biology 1101, or everyone took 1101, right? That's tough. This is another level above that. So it's a lot more material. And then in addition to it being more material, it's more complicated. We know a lot about the human body, which is awesome, but we know a lot about the human body, so there's a lot to learn. I'll talk about kind of what I'm covering from the textbook and what I'm not. I'm basically not covering everything. There's no way to cover everything in that textbook. I just want to cover it to the level that I think you guys will need it at this juncture, because you're going to go on to future courses and learn more specific material for your eventual career. So this is going to be sort of an intro to the human body. It's very broad scale. Well, yeah, we'll cover half of that book this semester, and then thankfully next semester, if you take A&P 2, it's the same book, so you don't have to buy it again. All right, so it's hard. That's just a heads up. It's not really to discourage you. It's more just to kind of get you ready for the amount of work you'll need to put into this course. I have a few slides here about sort of how to approach the course. I have a preparation and then what to do in class and what to do after class. So we have 3 slides here. And then I'll talk about what you can expect from me. And if you've had me before, I run all of my classes pretty similarly, so it won't be much of a shock. All right, so number 1, you have an assignment that's going to, for every chapter, you're gonna have to outline the text chapter. And that sounds painful and terrible, but I'll talk about it and why it's really important to do that in here. I don't often use textbooks all that much, but in this course, you'll need to have the textbook. If you don't, I'll show you, there's an outline due Friday. So if you don't have the textbook yet, I'll show you what you can use instead, but get the textbook if you haven't already. So yeah, get ready for class ahead of time. There's going to be a lot of words that you've never heard before. They're going to sound really foreign. It's Latinized medical terminology, and it's a lot of it. So seeing it at least ahead of time, even if you don't, obviously commit it to memory through reading the textbook or making an outline, that's fine. Even just seeing it helps before I go over it in class. So that's the idea behind the outlining of each chapter. And I'll talk about that in more detail when I get to showing you guys what's on Canvas. As you're doing that, or as you're kind of in the midst of it, try to figure out what's really confusing, because those really confusing points are what's going to trip you up potentially on the exam, and you want to get that ironed out and be ready. If you have questions about it and I don't explain it well enough in class, or you're still confused about it, then you can ask about that, rather than the night before a test being totally confused about something, emailing me, and I don't get back to you before the exam. So develop questions as you're going along. Realize what you don't understand or you just can't get a hold on. I do everything, mostly everything through Canvas. It's just an easy way to have everything organized. I put all of the assignment due dates on there. You'll upload any additional assignments to Canvas. So I use Canvas a lot. I guess that's the take-home message. So check Canvas for announcements, assignments, and any emails or messages that I send you. So keep an eye on Canvas. I'll show you how I have it organized. I know everyone kind of organizes Canvas a little bit differently. I think my way is pretty simple and straightforward. That's how I try to keep it. All right, during class, take notes. This can vary sort of how you approach it. I will have all the PowerPoints available on Canvas before class. So usually I'll get them up the night before. I don't usually stay up until 11 p.m. It's late for me these days. So they'll be up well before, I usually say 12 hours, but they'll be up before that. So you can print them out if you want to. You can download them. You can use your computers in here. I don't mind. Don't just copy what is on those slides. I know a lot of people do that because it makes them feel like they're doing something during class. Sometimes that's helpful, but I'm going to go through the slides faster than you can write all that information down. That's why I put them on Canvas. You can have them, print them, and take additional notes on them, or bring your computer, iPad, whatever, and take notes on them that way. If you don't take notes in here, it's a lot of lecturing. I'm going to be talking a lot. It's easy to get tired and distracted and do other stuff. It really helps you to kind of stay focused. I'll try to break up the lecturing a little bit with activities here and there, but there's kind of no other way to, there is other ways, but the best way that I found for students to learn anatomy and physiology is to lecture, do some application. And then really it's all about studying for exams. Yeah, number 2 kind of goes right along with that. Use this as a 50-minute study session. I say this in every class. I wasn't always great at it when I was taking classes. Try not to zone out. If you do, kind of try to snap yourself back in and focus. If I go over something that's really confusing and then you don't see it again until right before the test and you're confused about it, it's not going to go well. So use this time. It's time that you don't have to use outside class. That really goes for every class, I think. But just, yeah, keep that in mind. Ask questions. I talk a lot up here. I get really tired of talking. It's really nice to have people asking questions. I might not know all the answers. If I don't know the answer, I'll find it for you and get back to you. But do ask questions. I'll ask you questions. If you don't really know the answer, but you think you might, answer anyway. It's okay to be wrong. So scientists are wrong. That happens. And then you learn that you're wrong. And honestly, when I've been wrong before, that's when I learn the most. I never, if I'm wrong, and then I commit that that was the wrong answer and figure out the right one. So being wrong is okay. I'm not going to make you feel bad for it, and neither will your classmates. I really just want you guys to answer questions and talk. It's really painful asking questions and it being totally silent up here. Yeah. So participate. That'll also kind of keep you focused and awake. All right, so that's during class. Just focus. That's the goal during class, focus. Outside of class, if I have any assignments or handouts, they usually won't be for a grade. The idea behind any handouts I give you is it's a really helpful kind of additional study guide. So I make study guides for exams. They're basically just bullet points in my slides, more or less. But the assignments that I give you, it's because I'm going to harp on them on the exam, on that topic. So I want you guys to practice it, even if it's not for a grade. Reviewing your notes after each class is ideal. The likelihood of that happening a lot of times is pretty low, even if you just look over them once a week. Take the week's notes, look back through them. You don't have to memorize them at that point, but just, again, familiarizing yourself with those words, getting used to seeing them is going to be more helpful than you would imagine. Okay. So that's a lot that I expect from you guys, right? What can you expect from me? I try to be really transparent. That's why I like to use Canvas. So when exams are, what you need to know for exams, that's why I make study guides, just so you have bullet points. I'm not going to ask you anything beyond what's on those study guides. I'm not going to ask you anything beyond what I have on the PowerPoints. You'll be making outlines from the textbook. There is way more information in the textbook than I cover in here. There's just not, I guess there is enough time if I just talked really fast and never asked questions and never stopped. There's not enough time to cover everything in the textbook how I like to teach. So I kind of take a subset of that information, put it on the PowerPoints. That's what you need to know. I won't ask you anything that I haven't covered in lecture. Maybe it's not directly written on the PowerPoint. It might be kind of an additional expansion on a bullet point on a PowerPoint, but I will go over it in class if you need to know it. And then I put it on the study guide. The study guide is fairly general. It's not every single question that I will ask you, obviously, but it at least gives you some guidance as to what you need to know for the exams. Fairness, this usually comes up mostly at the end of the semester when people ask, oh, I forgot to, yeah, ask about a little grade bump. But I don't bump grades except in a specific case dealing with attendance. So you can ask me and say, can you give me another half of a percentage point? But if you didn't make the attendance goal that I set, then you don't get that. And I'll talk about that in a second. So that's the only fair way I know how to be totally objective. In grading, exams are totally multiple choice. So those are pretty objective. So I try to really be as fair as possible. Timely communication, I mentioned, I try to get back to you within 24 hours. And pretty much that will always happen, except maybe the weekends. Dedication to helping you learn, obviously, right? That's what all professors are going for. But I'm not standing up here extolling what I know about A&P. I want you guys to actually learn it. You're not going to remember it all, and that's fine. Even if you remember 50% of this material, going on to your next class, that's awesome. If you can remember more, that's great. But it's a lot of material. And like I said, any additional assignments or questions I ask are geared towards helping you remember and understand that material. I'll respect you. Any answers in class, your time. I don't post lectures to watch outside or videos to watch outside of class. We have 50 minutes, 3 days a week. I'm going to get the information in that you need in that time. The only big thing you really have outside of class, we'll have one project, but those outlines, those will take some time. But I know you guys have a lot of other classes and obligations. So I'll respect your time. I don't run over in class. Yeah. And it's challenging. I already said that. It's hard. It's a hard class. I don't know of any A&P class that isn't difficult. You're doing it right. Okay, the syllabus. I don't think anyone actually reads the syllabus, but it has a lot of useful information on there. I put it on Canvas, and I'll go to it in just a second when I show you kind of the setup of Canvas. But you can find all this stuff on there. Most important stuff is probably where your grade comes from. So I'll talk about that. I put the semester schedule up there and keep that updated. And last bullet point, labs start this week. So if you have lab on Mondays, you have lab today. I don't teach Monday labs, I teach Tuesday and Wednesday. So labs will be this week. Next week, we don't have any because of Martin Luther King Day on Monday. So no labs next week. This week, go to lab. Okay, so yeah, for those of you on Zoom, you can go to the Canvas site if you want to. I'm just going to go around Canvas, but in the interest of time, so I don't have to do this on 2 computers, I'm just going to show you that screen and hopefully you can follow along. Yes. Nope. Okay, so setup of Canvas, pretty straight. Oh yeah, student responsibility agreement. If you fill this out by Friday, you basically have to check a box and say you read something. If you fill it out by Friday, you'll get a bonus point on your first exam. So definitely do that. I'll remind you of it Wednesday and Friday if I remember. But go ahead and do that. You can do it now. You can do it right after class if you haven't already done it. But you have to do it for every class. So just go through all your classes and check it and get it off your to-do list. General course info, I might add some other stuff here, but right now, the important stuff is the course schedule, which I'll get into in a second, and the Zoom link. So if you have to quarantine or you have to be gone for some reason, if it's a legitimate reason, you'll get marked as excused. I'll talk about attendance in a second. If it's not, you can still join via Zoom. I'll just mark you as absent if it's not a legitimate reason to be out. This link will work the whole semester. You have to let me know if you're going to be gone. I'm not automatically going to start up Zoom every time. So give me a heads up. And I always have my laptop in class, so I can Zoom you guys in if you need to. Okay. Course schedule. I'll update this. I try to really stick to a schedule because it helps me, and I think it helps you guys. So you can see what we're talking about every single day of the semester. The outlines I'll talk about in a second, but your first one is due on Friday. So I have those listed there. They're also already uploaded as an assignment, so they should show up on your Canvas calendar. So you should get a warning that chapter 1 outline is due this Friday. The first few chapters should mostly be review. So chapters 1 through 3 are your first exam. This stuff will be new, like themes of A&P, but chemistry and cells. That should sound familiar. We went over that or you went over that at some point in general biology. And then we get into some of the actual A&P stuff. All right, the final is on here as well. It is not cumulative, so I'm changing that from previous semesters. Just over new stuff, no cumulative final. It's a lot of information. Every time I give a cumulative final in A&P, I feel kind of bad because it's so much information to study. Okay. So you can always find that. I'll keep it updated. Zoom link. Syllabus is here. This is where you can find all my contact info, and here's my office hours. So I have at least one office hour every day except Friday. I'm often here other times as well, so you can just drop by, but I'll definitely be here during these times in my office, Stewart 215. If not, I'll leave a note as to where I am. Probably just another classroom or something, setting up a lab or something. Here's the information on the textbook. If you don't have it already, get it soon. Here's where all your points are coming from. So exams, I don't break it up by percentages. It's just a total point kind of thing. So, oh, I didn't put the total points on here. There's 500 total points for the class. I'll add that in. 500 total points, 250 of those come from your 5 exams. 150 come from your chapter outlines. So doing those chapter outlines is really going to help your grade if you do them and get them in on time. If you don't, it will really hurt your grade. Disease presentation I'll talk about later this week. That's going to be 100 points. That's kind of the scientific communication side of things that I incorporate into the class. You can always figure out, I put all the grades in Canvas, so you can figure out what grade you have at any point. 5 lecture exams, including the final. I do have a late policy, 25% off for every day it's late. So if your chapter outline is due at 11 a.m., which they're due at the start of class on the day that I have listed, if you turn it in 11:05, it's late. It's 25% off. So keep that in mind. Attendance. This is what I forgot to mention in my 9 a.m. section. I teach at 9 as well. If you were in my general biology class, you know this. If you don't miss any day, so I'll take attendance every day. If you don't miss any day, at the end of the semester, you get a 1% bump. That's huge. So you could go from an 89.2 up to an A, right? So you go up to 90. It can really help, and that's the only way I'll bump your grade. If you don't miss any classes, if you have an excused absence, that doesn't count. That doesn't count as an absence. So if it's excused, that's fine. If you only miss one class unexcused, you get a 0.5% bump, which can also help if you have an 89.2. That would normally give you a B. Plus 0.5 would be 89.7. That gives you an A, so I round up. Just keep that in mind. It's really important to be in class. I do put all the information online, but it helps to hear it explained. So I explain it in more detail than I have on the slides. So be here. And if you're here every day, you get that 1% bonus. If you're here all but one day, you still get 0.5%. After that, you don't get any bonus. All right, I'm not going to read through all of this. It's all pretty straightforward. The last thing I want to talk about on here is the outline assignment. So that's your first assignment, due on Friday. If you go to assignments, that's where you'll upload all of your outlines here. So don't turn them in and don't hand them in. If you write your outline, if you like handwrite it, that's fine. Just take a picture of it and upload that. I try to keep everything on Canvas. It makes it easier for me, and I think easier for you guys, hopefully. Okay, so this first link will take you to the instructions. You can download the instructions here, but I've copied them. And then I have an example for you for chapter 1. Don't copy the chapter 1 for Friday, obviously, but this will give you a good idea of what I'm looking for, and I'll show you that in just a second. So you're going to outline every chapter, 16 chapters. That's a lot. I am not looking for a 10-page outline. You don't have to include every single thing in the chapter. Again, my main goal with these is to get you to look at the material before I go over it, because it's really complicated. So look at it, make a very basic outline. 2 pages should be plenty. If you do like a typical bullet point kind of outline, 2 pages, 12-point font, around that. It doesn't have to be exactly 2 pages. And you can go over 2 pages. You can make a 16-page outline if you want to. You could easily do that with these chapters. And if that's helpful to you, go for it. Awesome. I'm not going to take off for it being too long. If it's only a page, you won't get the full 10 points. So these are each worth 10 points. It'll kind of be a sliding scale. The first couple I'll use as if you don't quite hit the information that I'm looking for, I'll give you some advice on how to improve it. So don't stress too much about these first couple. I'll give you some notes on how to improve them. So 2-page, single space, 12-point font in Word or handwritten, whatever you want. Don't use outside sources. Don't copy a classmate's. It's really easy for me as I'm going through them in Canvas to see if you just copied someone else's. Yours, they'll look similar, right? You're outlining the same stuff. Yeah, you'll submit each outline. I don't care how you submit it. I have a Mac, so if you use a Mac program, I can see it, which is nice. Otherwise, PDF, Word doc, picture of handwritten notes is fine. I will say most people do an outline similar to this. So I think this is one from last spring. So this is chapter 1. Just typical bullet points. Each section with some bullet points under it. That is not all of the information in that section, and that's fine. If you have an idea for something else, some other way to summarize the chapter, go for it. Like a concept map. What else could you do? If you want to write it out in paragraph form, like write sentences, that's fine. If you want to write 2 pages of that, whatever helps you the most. Most people do something similar to this, but that doesn't mean you have to. If you're not sure if what you're doing is acceptable, either turn in the first one and I'll tell you, or you can ask me and I'll let you know. You will put stuff in your outline that I don't go over in class because I'm not covering every single thing in the textbook. Like I said, I don't have time. So a lot of this medical imaging, I'm not really going to go over. But like I said, everything on the exam, there's no real way for me to tell you exactly what I'm talking about ahead of time. So just do a basic outline of all those sections in the chapter, keeping in mind that the information for the test will be specifically from my PowerPoints. Does that make sense? Okay. So yeah, use that as an example if you want to. It doesn't, I don't care about grammar, punctuation, none of that. Just get the information down in a way that is helpful to you. Okay, any questions so far? If you don't have the textbook, that's what I'm gonna talk about next. Good, okay. If you don't have the textbook yet, for chapter 1, well, get the textbook first off. For chapter 1, I put a PDF version of a different textbook. It's not the Saladin textbook, but you can use this link here for the chapter 1 outline if you want to. So use that. After that, you should have the book by next week when the chapter 2 outline is due. So feel free to use that. You can still turn in your outline even if you don't have the book yet. Okay. Questions about the outline assignment? Don't stress too much about it. It's not a huge deal. It's really just to get you guys to look at the book. If I just tell you to read the book, you won't read the book. I know I never did. Okay. I think that's all of Canvas. Oh, I put the exams in here too. So you have the dates for all the exams. Those are showing up, but they're in person. So, but I think it's helpful to have it on your calendar. So they're all in there. Okay. That's it there. Go back to this. All right. So that's all I have about the course. Any questions? I'll talk more about the exams as we get closer. I don't need to go into that quite yet. Okay, so this is the material. I'm not going to quiz you on the syllabus stuff. All right, scope of anatomy and physiology. Anatomy and physiology, I mentioned it's slightly different. Does anyone know, would you be able to tell me what the difference is between anatomy and physiology? Why do we have the 2 terms? They're always kind of combined in one course. Does anyone have an idea of what the difference is, what anatomy might be?
anatomy is like the makeup of the body and physiology is the way it works.
Exactly, yeah. So anatomy is what we're made of, our bones. You're going to learn all of the bones in the human body, most of the bones in the human body. Some of the skull bones there's a lot of bones in our skull. You're going to learn most of the bones in the human body, the muscles, that's all anatomy. So anatomy is a lot of memorization. If you're good at memorizing stuff, you're going to be good at anatomy. It's a study of form. What makes us up? It doesn't say anything about how they work, right? So we're going to talk about how bones form. And bones, that's an organ system, which is kind of crazy. We don't think of bones as an organ, but they do stuff. They absorb calcium and release calcium, and are important in immunity, in our immune response. That side of things, what they actually do and how they function, is physiology. So you can see why these two often go together. When you talk about the anatomy of something, it follows very closely talking about what that something does, what the heart does, how it's structured, the different chambers in the heart is important to know because blood flows through it in a very specific way, which is how it works. We're not talking about the circulatory system in this semester, but that's a really good example. Muscle contraction is another one. We are going to talk about muscle contraction. You don't usually think about why would we think about the details of muscle contraction? But your muscles are pretty much always doing something. And it's really kind of complicated. So physiology oftentimes is a little bit more difficult for students to wrap their heads around. So we'll look at muscle contraction on the tissue level. So really tiny scale, you can't see it happening. We'll just have some diagrams talking about what it does, and there's a lot of steps. It's amazing how much goes into one muscle contracting. So that side of things is a little bit more difficult, but if you like understanding how things work and understanding kind of the mechanics of things, then you'll be good at and enjoy physiology. I think they're both cool. I like memorizing the bones, and I also really like knowing what all of our different organs are doing and how they do it. It's amazing that we continue to function as we do because everything is so complicated. Okay. So why do we take A&P? Why are you guys taking A&P?
It's a requirement.
You have to, right? So you have to for a number of reasons. Well, really for one reason. Whatever you're going to do, you need A&P for, right? This is kind of the introduction to the human body. If you're doing anything in any human health related career, you're in here. So are there people who are interested in nursing, med school, maybe, doctor, PT, physical therapy? My husband's a physical therapist. He had to do all this. PA, physician's assistant. There's a lot of different athletic training. That's a big one. So there's a lot of different careers. Anyone else? Those are like my main ones. What else is there? Occupational therapy. Awesome. Yep. OT. Pharmacy. Yeah. Pharmacy. Lots of chemistry. Yeah. So there's a lot of different careers dealing with human health. This is kind of the basis. You're going to learn a lot more detail about if you're in occupational therapy, you're going to learn about exactly what you need for occupational therapy later. This is the baseline. There's going to be a lot of stuff you don't need for your future careers in here. I mean, it's kind of how every class is, right? You don't need everything, but you need to have a good understanding of the human body. And hopefully you'll understand or it'll be a leg up for future classes dealing with any anatomy or physiology aspects. So healthcare, yeah, mostly dealing with healthcare. I don't do anything with human health. Humans kind of scare me when it comes to health. I'm interested in it, and I think it would benefit a lot of people just knowing about your own health. If you go into a doctor and they give you an EKG to look at your heart, you'd be able to read that EKG after the second semester. You would know what your heart is doing, the different contractions, if it's healthy, all that kind of stuff. That's a really specific example. And here we're going to talk about joints and why it's important to continue moving throughout your life. If you stop using your joints as much, they deteriorate, it makes it harder to move, and it's this positive feedback cycle into not being able to do a whole lot anymore. So I think it's interesting from that health perspective, staying healthy and understanding, you know, as you get older, your body doesn't work quite as well as it used to, and why that might be. All right, so that's the basics, A&P, that's what we're studying. I don't know if your book breaks down the themes into these three, but these three themes are going to show up over and over again. These will be recurring themes that we'll talk about throughout the chapters of this book. I may not mention them as a theme each time, but if you come back to these themes, you'll probably see, oh yeah, that's why we talked about, you know, the muscle contraction aspect or how bones are formed. It'll come back to this, at least one of these themes. The first one, structure determines function. This will be throughout all A&P. How our bodies are structured allows us to function in the way that they should or do. Our hand is structured in such a way with all these tiny bones and joints that we can grasp onto stuff and we can do really fine manipulations. A dog paw is structured very differently and does very different things, right? So that's a structure-function relationship. Homeostasis is the second major theme. I won't really refer to this a lot. I'll talk about it on Wednesday in some detail in here. I'll go into each of these themes kind of in detail over the next, mostly on Wednesday. Homeostasis is just something to keep in mind that our bodies try to stay within a range, within a happy medium, a happy range. We usually think about that with temperature. So our bodies want to stay around 98.6. That doesn't mean they never go above or below 98.6, but our body is constantly making adjustments, sweating, shivering to kind of bring us back to that 98.6 happy thermostat level. It happens with blood sugar. So when you eat, your blood sugar changes a lot and your body releases insulin to help control that blood sugar so you don't get a massive spike. There's all kinds of little tiny adjustments that your body's doing even now to help control blood pH, blood sugar, temperature, nerve impulses, etc. So we're constantly, we don't realize it, we're constantly trying to keep our bodies at this, in this homeostatic range. And then finally, the levels of human complexity and structure. So this will probably look familiar from general bio. You can break us all the way down to atoms, or you can build us all the way up to a whole organism, right? At our most basic, we're just a bunch of atoms working together. So we're going to talk about these different levels. We'll talk about the chemistry in that first, or the second chapter, chapter 2, go into cells and then tissues and slowly kind of build complexity until we're up to entire organs or organ systems. We're not really going to talk about the human as a whole. We're going to break it down into organs, where we're going to start really small and then we're going to build up. All right, so I kind of already explained this, but this is that first theme. Structure is determining function. If our hand wasn't structured in the way that it is, we wouldn't be able to grasp this pipe or whatever it is. If our heart didn't have 4 chambers with arteries and veins coming out at those specific places, it wouldn't be able to pump blood to our lungs, to our body, and back. And in a really simple sense, if we didn't have a mouth that opened, we couldn't ingest food and drink the same way that we do, right? That's kind of the most basic. If we had some kind of other opening, our physiology would be totally different, right? If we could only drink, for instance, we couldn't eat anything, we couldn't chew, that would change our physiology completely of the digestive tract. So this is that anatomy and physiology. When I talk about the structure of something, it's structured that way to allow it to do whatever function it's meant to do. So that'll come up over and over. And hopefully that's pretty straightforward. The hand is probably the easiest thing to think about there. All right. I think we'll stop there today. Any questions? Yeah, we'll get into homeostasis. It gets a little complicated on Wednesday.